And welcome to another edition of the Mojobreak Dugout Session. I'm Cody. Alongside me, as always, is Doug. And look, if you forgot about baseball last week, I can't really blame you. A lot's happening right now in the world of sports. Doug, we went from literally nothing to I sat on the couch on Saturday, and I was almost overwhelmed by the amount of options I had. It was too much sports, if there is such a thing.
Yeah, it made me want to go grab my TV from upstairs and have a game on my laptop and have 3 screens going at once just to kind of keep up with what was going on. I'd been waiting for football for a long time, so I had kind of paid attention to football most of the day yesterday. But
can't blame you.
We got some exciting stuff happening in baseball too, and it's just like you said, it's very hard to digest it all, and it's a good problem to have.
Yeah, if there was ever a time that I wanted really badly to go to a sports bar to watch everything, of course it's the time where no sports bars are open. So, but let me just try to give you some incentive of what you're missing in baseball. If you're watching the NBA Conference Finals, you're watching we're almost at the Stanley Cup Finals right now. NFL has just begun. College football, what teams are actually playing are playing. But here's what happened in baseball over the last week. Shane Bieber, that guy who has just lit the world on fire, fastest ever to 100 strikeouts in 62 2/3 innings pitched. The Tampa Bay Rays had the first all-lefty lineup in Major League history, in modern history, and they won 11-1. Go figure. Dodgers and Astros had that revenge series over the weekend. They split it. The Astros came back with a 5-run 9th inning on Saturday night, and then the Dodgers just walloped them 8-1 over the weekend. Dodgers and Padres, by the way, got a 3-game set this week. That's going to be a huge series. The Atlanta Braves, basically, I think we're celebrating the return of football because they put up a football score this week. 29-9 against the Marlins. The best part of that, I think at one point that game was 13-8, which, my God.
They didn't want to be outdid by the Giants this year. They're 23 points, runs, let's hold my beer.
Exactly. And earlier that day, the Brewers beat the Tigers 19-0. So you thought, oh, there it is. There's the blowout of the day. Not so fast, says Atlanta. The Chicago White Sox, which I think in the hobby is like the hot team right now.
Absolutely.
There's so many great rookies, such a good farm system, and it is all coming together for them. They are now, since starting 10-11, 20-5 since that start. They swept the Tigers over the weekend. They go into this week with a huge 4-game set against the Minnesota Twins. That is going to be an incredible series. That is something to watch. Albert Pujols hit his 660th home run. He ties Willie Mays. That number still means a lot, man. You tie Willie Mays, you've done something special.
Yeah, I mean, that's 660. It's kind of quiet news, too. It should be more celebrated. And I'm sure Topps has got some kind of Topps Now card to commemorate that. But I don't know. I don't really see a whole lot of guys getting 600 home runs in their career going forward. I mean, that's a tough feat to achieve.
It was happening so much for such a long time that it almost felt like it wasn't as important. But still, that number 660, I mean, he is now, the 5th or 6th player to ever reach that and plateau. So it's congratulations to Albert Pujols, who is a first ballot Hall of Famer, and it's already got over 2,000 RBIs.
You know, and you may be mentioning this, but it reminded me of the stolen base record. And rest in peace to Lou Brock, who recently just passed away this week. But you look at those numbers with Ricky and Lou Brock, and you're like, that's never going to happen again. It's almost similar to the home run. You know, it just doesn't seem like that's, guys were getting 100 stolen bases in a season. I think we had Carl Crawford that got kind of close, but nobody's even blipped since then. And I feel like you're getting that with home runs, but we'll see.
It might happen unless they decide, to juice that ball up a little bit. Then maybe we'll see. And then lastly, the most improbable no-hitter of the year happened on Sunday. Alec Mills of the Chicago Cubs wasn't even supposed to be here. I'm not even working today, a la Clerks. He was not supposed to be in the starting rotation. Jose Quintana gets hurt at the beginning of the season. They go from bullpen into the rotation. He made 6 starts prior to the season, a 22nd round pick in the 2012 draft. He was a walk-on in college, throws a no-hitter against the Milwaukee Brewers on Sunday. So congrats to him. And both no-hitters, by the way, in Chicago this year. That All-Chicago World Series, who knows, maybe. I would love to see it.
Who? Who is that again? What's his name?
Alec Mills. I mean, just out of nowhere. He's not a big-time prospect. Like I said, he made 9 starts this year. He made 6 in his entire career prior to this season.
Crazy.
That's baseball for you in a nutshell. But let's talk about the hobby. Let's get into it. There's a couple of big releases this week. First and foremost, something we talked about last week, Bowman Chrome is coming out this week. And I think the general vibe from seeing that checklist, Doug, is that a lot of people are not super hyped or as impressed as maybe we usually are. And I think a big reason for that is because of the uncertainty, the weirdness of the 2020 season. No minor leagues happening, no international, just no baseball outside of Major League Baseball happening other than some international leagues. And I think that's a reason why maybe there is not nearly as much hype surrounding that checklist, and maybe some people a little bit disappointed by that checklist here early on. What do you think?
I agree, and I think you hit on all the main points. Is the fact that there is no baseball going on in the minor leagues, so we don't know how these guys can perform. There's literally, you could probably find some video on YouTube of them in high school, or some of these international guys. You could find their prospect footage, but there's usually somebody that's in there that people are chasing, and I think this year there isn't, but there will be. So rest assured that you're getting into breaks, you're buying boxes. There will be somebody that emerges from this draft at some point, or from this product at some point. So it's just a matter of time. It might be one of those scenarios, if you have some boxes or you're buying some cases, you may want to just set them to the side and just wait for this product to, really take off when some of these guys are starting to hit home runs and starting to make the squads. Or even next year if minor league baseball goes back to normal. But Bowman first, it's always the best card. So it's, with the amount of guys on the checklist, you got the Luis Robert rookie cards in there as well. I think the product's going to be a lot of fun. And what I love about baseball prospecting, unlike the other sports, is that you get to kind of get in at the ground level, and in a sense you have entertainment for, 3, 4, 5 years sometimes, watching this guy go through the minor league system, hoping that he becomes the next Trout. Whether you're dealing with NFL, you're dealing with NBA, you usually know right away that they're not going to be anything. They're not going to make their team because they're just vaulted right into the league, where these guys have to go through the system and pay their dues most of the time before they get called up.
Yeah, there's a lot of international guys in this box as well. So there's just guys that, as you mentioned, these are guys that are, 18, 17, 16 years old sometimes, that are just not going to see the light of day in the major leagues for quite some time. So patience is a virtue, and maybe it's a little more of a chance to do your homework here with this next set, where these are not the obvious names. But I did want to point out, I don't know if this is Topps trying to save face, maybe catching wind from in the community that people are a little bit underwhelmed by the checklist, but they decided just out of the blue to show you, hey, here's what Spencer Torkelson's 2021 Topps card is going to look like, his Bowman card is going to look like. You think that's a little bit of Topps trying to be like, don't worry, here's what's coming in the future. Everybody just calm down, relax. Everything's going to be fine.
Well, I have a few issues with this. Obviously, this is from the sell sheet of the 2021 Bowman. Yeah. So we do still have draft coming out. So they kind of left us more with more questions here. The fact that the Torkelson card does not have a first Bowman on it means that, is he going to be in draft with the first Bowman? Right. They did not show an autograph, which they showed a few guys that had autographs in the set for the 2021 Bowman. They did not show Torkelson mocked up as an autograph. So will his autograph be in Bowman draft? Will he be held out for 2021 Bowman? That is my guess, is that he's going to be in 2021 Bowman as the biggest highlight name, similar to what they did with Bobby Witt. So if you're new to cards, basically when the draft happens, the first round of guys, I would say about 80% of the first round typically goes into the Bowman draft for that year. And then they usually hold out a couple big names to debut in Bowman. A la this year we had Jason Dominguez and we had Bobby Witt, Robert Puason, and they use those for 2020 Bowman. So it's interesting what they're going to do with Torkelson, but I do like the fact that maybe they did feel the fact that it was an underwhelmed checklist, and they want to, they are saying, hey, Torkelson's coming, but it left us with more questions than we have answers.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously that's been really the theme of this year and everything, is there's more questions than answers. So that's definitely going to be the guy to watch. And to kind of jump off of that, and let's focus on this list. And like we said, some people might feel a little underwhelmed, about this checklist, but we're here to tell you there are some interesting names, especially among the prospects. So let's go over some of those names, and I actually want to start off with a guy that I think could end up being sort of the Robin to Spencer Torkelson's Batman. That would be Detroit outfielder Riley Green. I watched a little bit of those summer camps, those practices and those scrimmage games back in July when I was just really itching for anything Major League Baseball. And Riley Green was a guy who really jumped out. He made a spectacular over-the-wall catch to rob a home run in one of those scrimmage games, and then hits a huge opposite field home run. And he's 19 years old. Like, this guy has got a huge potential. He's already very quickly at the top of some of Major League Baseball's top prospect lists. In 57 games in the minor leagues last year, he hit .271 with .347 on base percentage. And at 18 years old, he's doing this. And he went to 3 different minor league levels last year, which is quite a rise. So I think this is a guy that is going to be really that complementary player next to Spencer Torkelson. I think in a perfect world, Detroit envisions Torkelson and Riley Green being a sort of new age Manny Ramirez, David Ortiz, or Jeff Kent, Barry Bonds. Insert your favorite 1-2 power duo here. I think Green is a guy to really watch in this set.
Yeah, I mean, one thing to mention is it's going to be his second Bowman. He actually has his first Bowman in 2019 Bowman draft. I do like the added value, though, because if he is a guy that does blow up, the second and third Bowman will still hold a candle. Yeah. Obviously, the first Bowman will be the most coveted, but if he has an Acuna-like run, you look at there's like 10 Acunas that all went up. So it's definitely an extra added value to have him in there. He won't have the first Bowman logo on it, but it'll still be a nice auto, and he's got great penmanship, so it's going to be a nice-looking card.
That's always a plus. You always like to have the nice auto, just to look at. A few other guys I want to mention, the New York Mets, the catcher Francisco Alvarez, a international prospect. In his first year in professional ball, 42 rookie league games, he hit .312 with a .407 on base percentage. Anytime you are a big-time prospect in New York, you got to watch, whether you're on the Mets or you're on the Yankees. And the Mets have a pretty good history when it comes to the catcher position. A couple Hall of Famers there, so Alvarez could be in the next in line there. Another New Yorker, shortstop Oswald Peraza, .263 average, .332 on base in 2019. Could be a 20 home run, 30 stolen base sort of guy. He's a little tougher, though. With one, it's the Yankees, so you always want to keep an eye on top prospects in the Yankees farm system. But Gleyber Torres is there at the shortstop position. He just moved, but maybe they'd figure out a way to get that bat in the lineup for the New York Yankees, who just, I think if you're in New York, pretty much a good bet that if you can even make it, if you're not even maybe the number 1 prospect or like the top number 5 prospect, your value just going to go through the roof.
Absolutely.
Despite that,
Yep. Yeah. That's one of the first things that prospectors look at is what market does this guy come from. So usually a safe bet is the Yankees, the safest bet out of all. So and at some point, and their farm system has been great. I mean, you can see all the guys that Judge and all this that they retooled after all the money they spent. They started trading for prospects and drafting well, so they've got a good system there, so it's a good guy to invest in.
Yeah, 2 other guys I want to talk about, and then I'll get into one dark horse guy that I think is interesting. 2 guys who have already made a major league debut. They are listed as prospect autos in this Bowman set. That would be Miami Marlins first baseman Lewin Diaz and Chicago White Sox pitcher Jonathan Stever. And Stever actually made his major league debut on Sunday, and he was drafted just a couple of years ago, if I'm correct. Made his minor league debut in 2018, and here he is in 2020 pitching for the number 1 team in the American League, and actually looked pretty good in 3 2/3 innings. Could be a guy who very quickly gets into that rotation for the Chicago White Sox. Lewin Diaz, tons and tons and tons of power potential. 27 home runs in 128 minor league games last season. And really, for me, the White Sox and the Marlins, two teams to really keep an eye on those prospects, even though they are getting a lot of those guys now finally coming up, but they have been developing and been trading for big-time prospects for a long time now. So two teams I think that are always worth keeping an eye on for collectors.
Yeah, one thing to keep in mind, too, as a piece of advice, if you're thinking about jumping into the prospecting Bowman game, is to keep in mind when guys are drafted, there's different age levels. So if you have a guy that's gone 4 years in college, a la Joey Bart, he's going to have a faster chance of getting to the majors. But a guy that's drafted out of high school or drafted in the Dominican or Cuba or one of these international free agents, they may go 4 or 5 years in the minors because they get them at 17, 18. They don't go to college. They're so talented that they get drafted early, and then they have to go through the ranks. I mean, you look at Wander Franco, I think he's barely 19, and people are like, hey, when's he going to come up? Well, he's still 19 years old. Whether you have like Soto and you have these guys that are coming up around 2021 when they get seasoned. So one thing to look at when you're deciding on who to prospect is finding out that age, and then there's also some guys in the set that are like 26, 27,
right?
Which, it might be cool if you're a fan of that team, but if you're looking for something to invest in long term, may not be the greatest idea. So just keep in mind, I always try to look at that from the path to the draft, path to the baseball, and the age as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's going to be people who have probably been hanging on to Jason Dominguez for about 5 or 6 years by the time he finally makes his major league debut. So it's all about patience in the baseball hobby. One last guy I want to mention, and if you got some dark horse candidates, Doug, I'd love to hear them. But one guy that I did a little more research on him, and partly it's because he's in the Dodgers system, and I feel like the Dodgers are now in that same category as, like, for years growing up watching baseball, the Braves and the Cardinals were always these two teams that had guys who were not ever considered a top 100 prospect in like Baseball America or your favorite prospect list of choice. And yet they would become everyday players and become all-star players. And it was both amazing and incredibly frustrating as a fan of opposing teams to see, like, how do they keep doing this? And I think the Dodgers are now firmly in that category. And a guy that I think could be that next guy is an infielder for the Dodgers, Devin Mann, who was not a highly touted player coming out of college. But since then, all he has done is rake in the minor leagues. 286 average and a 366 on-base percentage, 501 slugging percentage last year, and 103 minor league games, 19 home runs. I'm not saying he's going to be this guy, but think of him as like when Pete Alonso came up to the New York Mets, another guy who wasn't super highly touted and just kept hitting and kept getting tons of home runs at the minor league level, and at some point just couldn't be denied. He kind of feels like in the same vein. He just keeps getting better and better. He plays the infield. He can play third base. Justin Turner is not going to be there forever in LA. I wouldn't be totally shocked if Devin Mann is that guy who is the next sort of unknown name to come from the Dodgers farm system and make an impact on the everyday lineup.
Yeah, and this is gonna be a homer pick for me, but my dark horse is Luis Matos from the Giants. So 18-year-old kid out of Venezuela, and last year played some DSL. So his first year in and had a 367 batting average. So it was in 60 games, so small sample size, 7 home runs, and he's an outfielder. So, Giants always rotate through outfielders trying to find the right one. I mean, I think we've got a good one in Yaz, but there's still 2 spots open there in that outfield. So might be a chance that he comes up in the future with Helio Ramos, with who's the other guy I'm thinking of?
Hunter Bishop, who's been talked about a lot. Yeah,
right. And who's the second base infielder that I'm thinking of?
Luciano.
If
you're looking, I don't know if he's in this set, but Luciano, and I'm not just saying this as a homer, there have been a lot of top scouts who have said, don't be surprised if Marco Luciano is the number one prospect in baseball in about a year or two.
Yep. And that's, I mean, that could all be part of that next generation, where maybe Buster Posey retires and, maybe Joey Bart comes to be and Hunter Bishop comes to be. And then you got Luciano and you've got Luis Matos and you have, maybe a Yaz still. So there's a situation where this kid looks like he has a good amount of power and he's still developing as a young kid. So definitely a dark horse.
Yeah, I definitely always go for a guy. It's not only a great player, but coming into a really good situation, possibly with this Giants influx of young talent, like I mentioned with Devin Mann, a guy who could be coming into a lineup where he's got Cody Bellinger and Corey Seager and Mookie Betts already all established, so he's just going to feed off of that. NL West, by the way, I feel like we're kind of playing it down. This division is going to be really, really good for a long, long time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, well, let's move on to another big release coming out in the next week, and that would be the Allen and Ginter 2020. Topps Allen and Ginter, always a fun collection, a lot of classic cards, a lot of really quirky cards in this set. As you take a look at some of the cards there and some of the other sets where you got like the tokens and you've got a lot of really interesting memorabilia. But Doug, I think actually instead of focusing on the baseball side of things, let's focus on the non-baseball side, because there are a lot of really interesting non-baseball autos in this set. I just selected a few here. Two comedians that Steve Byrne, very funny man, is going to be in the set. Nick Thune, who's got probably the best quote about being in the set, said, "Finally, we have an equal trade for a Honus Wagner rookie card." And yeah, absolutely. Also a great set. I'm not sure if you were a big Tony Hawk Pro Skater guy, Doug.
Yes.
Did you play it? Okay, so because it's all back now. That new Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 is now remastered on Xbox and PlayStation. So I think that craze is totally back. So you got Ryan Nyquist in there in Extreme Sports, a BMX guy. I saw Bucky Lasek is in there, a guy I liked to use a lot in Tony Hawk. I was more of a Bob Burnquist guy, really. That was usually my go-to guy.
Was Steve Caballero ever in Tony Hawk?
I think he was.
Local guy?
I'm pretty positive that he was in at least the first one. I think Nigel Houston, who has become a big name in the skateboarding community, is now also in this set. He's also in the new remastered version of Tony Hawk. So
where can we find this new remastered version? Can you get it on Xbox?
Yeah, I think it's on Xbox, PlayStation right now. You can download it. It's supposed to be spectacular. So
nice.
I think I would love to play it and remember how bad I am at Tony Hawk Pro Skater. But yeah. Anyway, that's another story. But let's talk about some of those the most interesting non-baseball autos. You see a few of the faces there if you're watching the video. You got Ludacris, you got Spike Lee, you've got multiple members of the U.S. women's national team for the soccer, for the number one team in the world, the soccer team there, Alex Morgan, Megan Rapinoe. So what are some of the guys that are most interesting to you in this non-baseball auto set for Allen and Ginter?
Paul Rudd for me was probably the one that I will go after. Obviously, the value probably won't be there for Spike Lee. In my opinion, Spike Lee and some of the soccer will probably be the highest selling. But Paul Rudd, one of my favorite comedians, Knocked Up, 40-Year-Old Virgin, all those movies from Judd Apatow are fantastic. I love his style of humor, and had a great episode on the Hot Ones that's been used as a meme recently. It's
become as iconic as almost anything he's ever done.
I see it on my timeline almost every day. I mean, it's crazy. So Paul Rudd will be the guy that I'm going to be looking for. Also, you mentioned Tony Hawk. He actually signed for Ginter. I don't remember what year it was, but there is a Tony Hawk Ginter card that's out there that he autographed and everything like that. That's going to be pretty cool. One other thing to add about Ginter that's very unique to Ginter, and this is more on the baseball side, but they have what's called a rip card. And the fascinating thing, if you haven't heard about what a rip card is you get a card and then there's another card inside of it, but you don't know what it's going to be. So it's one of those things that you may get something that's more valuable on the inside or you may not. So people can choose to whether or not to sell it unripped or take their chances and rip it and see what they get. And then on top of that, they have a double rip card that you rip one, and then you could possibly rip the second one. So it always creates conversation in our break room that, hey, you guys want to rip this card or not? Or you want to, it's always like, should I rip it? Is it worth more unripped? So it's a very kind of unique scenario that only applies to Ginter.
I love that. As a fan of, what are they called? Babushka dolls? Those little.
Yeah.
I'm into that. I love that. It's kind of speaks to this set too. It's just really a fun set that's so unique and so much different than anything else out there. To go off some of the non-baseball autos we were talking about, you know what? I think the Paul Rudd one actually could be a big one if you are into completing maybe your Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Oh, that's
sets.
true.
That's kind of the ones, before we started today, I was reviewing, has Paul Rudd done the Infinity War, the Endgame sets that came out with the autographs, and he's not on there. So
I think he's in the latest Marvel Masterpieces.
Well, there you go.
I think.
Okay.
I could be wrong. But I didn't even look at that from a Marvel standpoint. I looked at his earlier stuff and his, the stuff that I'm used to.
Yeah, now he's gone even beyond, he's gone beyond Sex Panther at this point. Yeah. He's now Ant-Man. So, if you're looking as a completionist for that Marvel MCU, if you're looking to get all the members of the Avengers, this might be one that's very appealing to you to get Paul Rudd. I was looking. I could not find Robert Downey Jr. I don't think has signed any of this stuff. As far as I could tell, maybe he has.
And I know a lot of times it's hard for them to get actors like that. Maybe it's just not financially, makes sense. Or some guys just refuse to sign. Maybe it's something that they hold out. If their career completely maybe goes in the tubes, then they could start making money in that avenue. But some guys are just like, they don't ever sign.
Yeah, maybe there's like an Ally McBeal card set out there somewhere with Robert Downey Jr.'s autograph. It was
Paul Rudd, interesting to point out, I believe was in Clueless. Was one of his first movies.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. The man is he hasn't aged a day. Also.
No, not at all.
Completely envy him. Yeah, he's about 20 years. I'm 20 years younger than him, and yet he looks about 20 years younger than me.
Right.
Yeah, it must be nice.
Yeah. What's he eating? Let's find out the diet.
Yeah, I think also the Spike Lee one too is going to be one that people go after because he's also got a connection to the sports world. Like
exactly.
He puts himself. He is very much in the Jack Nicholson vein, where it's just like he's the Jack Nicholson of the Knicks. Where he just is always there. He's just a presence, and at Yankee games as well. So, and he had a new movie this year that was seen by a lot of people on Netflix. So that could be also playing it.
And I'm surprised that Panini, who holds the basketball license, hasn't done something. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below, but I don't think they've had a Spike Lee auto where that might make sense, where you have a picture of some shoes. And now I know the Michael Jordan license, this gets even trickier, is part of Upper Deck. So then you can maybe say, well, could Upper Deck have done like a dual auto with Spike Lee and Michael Jordan, for that commercial that was popular? Really cool. But yeah, Topps gets them and puts them in a baseball set. Even though when I think Spike Lee, obviously, is a great film career, but I think basketball first.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Also, the hat he always wears with I think the Yankee ring hat. He always wears that hat.
Yep.
Even at Knick games. Maybe one day when he decides to hang up that hat, maybe you could cut up little pieces, put it in like a patch card or something like that. And that would be.
He must wear that because when's the last time the Knicks won a championship?
Right.
I mean, I think.
Do you want to have a hat that's got like one or two shiny things on it versus 27 shiny things on it? I think I'll take the 27. So, yeah, there's going to be a lot of interesting names to go after there. And as you mentioned, I think the soccer, extreme sports will also be interesting. So, a lot to choose from beyond the world of baseball in that Allen and Ginter set. A really fun set. But let's focus now on the world of baseball. And it's been an exciting couple of weeks, as I've mentioned. And more for the hobby, let's focus on that. The rookie class this year, I think, has been exceptional. In a regular season and a full season, maybe we would be taking a little more notice of just how good the young players in Major League Baseball are, and even beyond the rookie class. A lot of young guys. I mean, the MVP probably of the National League is going to be Fernando Tatis Jr., who is under 25 years old. Juan Soto is still under 25, and he is an MVP contender. There is a lot of great young talent right now in Major League Baseball. Kind of reminds me of, was it 2012 where Mike Trout and Bryce Harper both got selected to the All-Star game, both either just after the rookie season or it was their rookie season.
And then you had Chris Bryant basically the next year, right? So you had like three guys that were looking like they were going to hold the baton from like a Derek Jeter. But I'm not so sure. This class looks like they may be the new face, with these young guys.
There's a lot of similarities, I think, to that feeling. And again, if it was a full season, wouldn't it be amazing that, at the Midsummer Classic, you'd see Fernando Tatis, Luis Robert, Kyle Lewis, all of these guys who are about to become the faces of baseball for the next generation. So I think let's talk about some of the guys. Obviously, we'll talk about some obvious names that have been the talk of the hobby for months now. But let's look into the future, 5 years from now. Who are the guys that you would most want from this rookie class to hang on to? The guys that maybe, obviously Luis Robert, everybody wants him, but maybe a guy that is not quite at that value yet that you would want to start investing in now, and maybe 5 years down the road, you're seeing some real bang for your buck.
Yeah, I mean, you got Ryan Mountcastle on that list, and we've been a fan since 2015 of Ryan Mountcastle, and I know it's a very small sample size of his stats so far, but he's got Adley Rutschman waiting in the wings. I think they have a lot of young talent in that organization where he could be one of the cornerstones of that up-and-coming Orioles team.
Yeah, I really like Mountcastle, and, he kind of came up later with the rookie class of this year. Luis Robert's been up almost the whole year. Kyle Lewis has been up almost the whole year. Joe Adell, another guy that I'm not even listed, really, because he's just had a rough rookie year, but could very well be among the best, if not the best, of this rookie class when we're talking 5 years from now. But Mountcastle right now leads all qualified rookies in batting average, on-base percentage, and slugging percentage.
Yeah.
And when you're talking guys like, I've heard everyone says, I think it was Jose Abreu says Luis Robert is the Cuban Mike Trout. And when you have a guy like that among this class, and Ryan Mountcastle is at the top of the leaderboards, you're doing something well.
Yeah. Crazy.
He's a very, very impressive young player. Obviously, Luis Robert, Kyle Lewis have been spectacular. Jake Cronenworth is a guy that I think is interesting. He's a little old for a rookie, 26 years old. I don't know if 5 years down the road that's a guy you're going to want to hang on to, because 5 years down the road, that's a 31-year-old player. So it's a great story. I think he ends up winning Rookie of the Year in the National League, to be quite honest, but just don't know if, that's you're going to want to hang on to a guy that long who's already, 5 years into his career, already, as they say, on the wrong side of 30.
Yep.
And then a guy that I think is, from what I have seen of him, has been really impressive and has just not quite gotten the hype, I think, because there's been so much good young talent, partly because it's been such a strange season with no minor leagues that some of these young guys just need a place to play, and that minor league camp is not going to cut it. So you see guys like Alec Baum of the Philadelphia Phillies, who has looked really impressive, I think, at times for that Phillies club, and a guy that could get a chance to shine in the postseason if the Phillies make it. So I think those are also guys to keep an eye on, like him, and like a few other guys, maybe some pitchers on the Dodgers like Tony Gonsolin and Dustin May, who are going to get a chance to really increase their value come playoff time.
Yeah, and one thing also to be interesting to follow is Topps Update is coming out, and Update is known to have some of these late rookies. I mean, the iconic Mike Trout came out in 2011 update. So it'll be interesting to see if they do put in a Ryan Mountcastle, if they do put in, some of these guys. Alec Baum hasn't had a rookie card yet. So I'm kind of waiting to see what they're going to do with that, which they may be announcing pretty soon. But the great thing about the Topps Update is it doesn't get made into the complete sets. So when you go to your Target, your Walmart, and you see the complete set, it's only Series 1 and Series 2. So Luis Robert is in Series 2. So he's going to have a card in there which is going to make more cards out in the market. So the update guys don't get that. So in turn, there's always going to be less of their cards out there. So, but this year with update, people didn't know what route they're going to do because, the way the season goes, they don't have 120, 180 games to figure out who to put in an update. So we'll see what they do. Yeah,
I think that update set is going to be one of the most coveted, I think, in a long, long time, just because there is such a huge influx of rookies that I think 4 or 5 months ago, before we knew what was going to happen with this baseball season, I don't think anybody would have expected some of these guys to be at the major league level. Just talking from a local perspective, I was just sure that before we knew that this was going to be a short season, I just had accepted that Joey Bart was going to be on the Giants in 2021. That this was not going to happen in 2020, but here we are with about 2 weeks left of the season, and he is the starting catcher for that team. So I think there's going to be a lot of really interesting names, especially this year. Before we do move off this topic, a couple more names I want to mention. The pitchers that I think are interesting to watch. I already mentioned a couple for the Dodgers. Tony Gonsolin and Dustin May are part of that starting rotation for the best team in Major League Baseball. And those have been guys who have been names that have been highly sought after amongst young pitchers for a few years now, but they really look like the real deal for LA. Another, again, I already mentioned it, the fact that this team just produces great talent like it's no big deal is just it's maddening, but good for them.
And one thing to note I was going to say about the update, Topps does have full control on who they put in. So last year they decided to put Jordan into this year, even though Jordan qualified for a rookie. So I don't expect them to put everybody in, but they'll have to put some in. So I'm sure they have some decisions because they're going to keep some of them for the 2021 Series 1. So they have a lot to choose from.
Yeah. A ton to choose from, including a guy that I watched over the weekend pitching in Miami. When Pedro Martinez says about you, this guy looks like what I looked like when I pitched. You're doing something right. And that guy's Sixto Sanchez, who's now pitching for the Marlins, pitched against his former team, the Philadelphia Phillies. He was swapped in the JT Realmuto trade, and he looks like the real deal. And
just probably without the Roosters fighting, right?
Right, exactly.
Couldn't really.
But this guy looks like the real deal, man. This guy is really impressive. He's got great strikeout stuff. And another guy on the American League side that I think has got that same sort of electricity on the mound. The numbers aren't quite there yet, but this guy has the same frame as Tim Lincecum, but he's about 5 or 6 inches taller.
Wow.
That's Tristan McKenzie of the Cleveland Indians.
So you're saying he needs to eat a cheeseburger or two.
Right, exactly. Yeah, he's got this really wiry frame, but also this really interesting demeanor on the mound. Like when he throws it, it's sort of a relaxed demeanor. Like there's almost, it's so effortless, and I love watching him. He's a really exciting player, a guy that I think in a full season, maybe next year when he gets a full season, could be the type of guy that really captures the attention and captures the imagination of baseball fans, like Tim Lincecum did, or Fernando Valenzuela, or Mark Fidrich, and hopefully those careers last a little longer for him because he does have this really electric stuff when he takes them out, and a guy that I think it's definitely to keep an eye on, especially those types of pitchers who, like I mentioned, those guys like Tim Lincecum and stuff, where suddenly they go from sort of if you're really, really into baseball, you might know them, but to the typical baseball fan, maybe they don't know them, but literally within a year, they go become the face of the game, a guy that maybe to start collecting now for next season.
Definitely.
Well, before we wrap things up here today, I kind of want to end on a fun note here. I always love talking about expanding the game of baseball, and maybe other people are saying, expanding the game? Come on, man, slow your roll. We're in the middle of an economic downturn, and you want to build more stadiums? And okay, fine, I get it. I'm not being a realist here, but there does seem to be one organization, one ownership group that has real momentum right now to bring baseball to a brand new city, and that would be the group that is trying to put together a team for Nashville, Tennessee, Music City, as it were. We've heard Dave Dombrowski, the former Tigers and Red Sox front office executive, is part of this group. Dave Stewart is part of this group. It's very notable for being the first majority African-American ownership group that would, if they were to get a team, would own a baseball team. And they are actually planning on naming the team after Nashville's Negro League team, the Nashville Stars. So I think it would be a great thing for the city, a great way to honor the history of the Negro Leagues. And Nashville, I've never been to Nashville, but everything I've heard about Nashville is that it's a really cool town. All the music biz is moving to Nashville from LA, so it kind of feels like only a matter of time until the Nashville boom. It's kind of happening right now as we speak. So it did gain steam this week because, speaking of music, Justin Timberlake is now a part of this group. So to me, this feels like a no-brainer. It sounds like Nashville's getting baseball, Doug.
Sounds good. And I mean, Justin has got sunshine in his pocket, so he might be able to bring some sunshine in the form of a baseball team to Nashville. And I've always wanted to travel to Nashville just because I'm a big music guy as well. Want to check out all those famous venues, catch a couple shows. Obviously, hopefully when it gets back to normal. I don't know if I'm assuming there's no shows going on now, but I think it's a great city. And I know a few people that live out there that just, talk about how great the people are, how nice everybody is out there. So I'm all for it. I'm all for let's get another team in. You could bring some people into the city of Nashville, which I heard is a pretty nice little economy they got going on there. And it probably will be well attended.
Yeah, I think this has got I think this is a great idea, especially if you could build the ballpark near the downtown area where they got the strip. I don't know it off the top of my head. Again, I've never been to Nashville, so my Nashville vernacular may be lacking. But there's that strip of downtown that's got all the bars and music clubs and venues. If you could build the ballpark within walking distance of that, man, oh man, what an environment that would create where you could get out of the game and then just head to a bar or head to a bar or a club and go watch a show. It would feel very similar to like the Petco Park vibe or Oracle Park, where you just get out and downtown's right there. The night is yours. You can do whatever you want. That would be great. I think this is a great idea to bring baseball to Nashville, whether it be with an expansion team, whether it be relocating a team. It always feels like right now Tampa Bay just cannot figure out how to get a ballpark built over there. Oakland has had their struggles, although it sounds like they are really, really trying to make things happen at Oakland.
They got to keep one team at least.
They got to keep one. I don't think Oakland's the team leaving. I think if any team maybe is the most likely candidate, Tampa makes sense to me. But let's just imagine for a second that that's not what happens. That they expand. We get an expansion draft. I haven't had an expansion draft in nearly 20 years. I would love to watch one. I was too young.
The Diamondbacks and
the Diamondbacks and the aforementioned Rays when they were the Devil Rays.
Yep.
So
and then right before that was what, the Rockies and
Marlins.
Marlins. Yep.
Yeah. I would love to see an expansion draft. I was too young to remember it, so that would be a lot of fun to tune into. But if you're going to have an expansion team, you're going to need two to even things out. It would be a little weird with only one. So what cities stick out to you as the most obvious second choice? Assuming Nashville is a done deal and right now they've got the most momentum, what is that second city that you think is most deserving of a baseball team right now?
I'm going to take the easy one and say Vegas, just for the simple fact that we've seen how the success rate with the Vegas Golden Knights, just so much tourism there. I mean, I've been there 15, 16 times in my life for different things, business, bachelor parties. So it just makes a lot of sense that if you're like a, Tiger fan and your team's playing the Vegas, you kind of can plan your trip around going to a few games, enjoying the Vegas nightlife, taking in some shows. I think it's just a no-brainer, and I think Vegas would put up any sport if they could, just as another thing to do for Vegas.
Yeah, I think Vegas is probably the easy answer as well, and especially if you're going to have a team in Nashville, to have a team in Vegas, so you've got teams on each coast. It's the cleanest way to do it. And baseball, I think, was always really hesitant about Vegas. Obviously, their history with gambling is duly noted. Just look up the Pete Rose story, and we all know that. So I think they've always been really hesitant about connecting themselves to that world. But that line has been so blurred over the past few years.
I'm pretty sure you see FanDuel and DraftKings ads, right?
Exactly.
So they're going to take their money. I mean, it's, and I think there's some rules put into play for the Raiders where I don't think they're allowed in-game betting, at the stadium type thing. I mean, granted, you could probably walk across.
Honestly. That's what a shame. How fun would it be to go to the game? You go get your ticket, and right next to the box office, you place your bets.
Exactly.
Man, I want that.
Kind of like a horse race, right? I mean, you're allowed to do it for that. But
well, they do it in Europe and England for Premier League and stuff. So
I mean, I was even thinking you could put like a little iPad in the back of everybody's seat, or maybe in the the luxury area, and you could be in-game betting.
Just keep betting throughout the game.
Yeah. I mean, you'd stay for the entire game. You'd have so many alcoholic beverages. and you'd be having some fun out there.
Yeah, by week 8, half that fan base would be bankrupt from just.
Well, that's the other thing. Maybe like the MGM would be like, no, because they're not going to have any money left to go to our casino afterwards.
Right, just morally, maybe it's just like maybe we shouldn't.
Exactly.
But I think Vegas. It's if hockey can work in Vegas, Major League Baseball I think absolutely can work. Build a great venue right there. I think maybe they'll want to see how the Raiders experiment is going to go to start off. So it may take a couple of years until, they can get fans back at the stadium and really see how that works. But I can tell you right now as a 49ers fan, the moment the Niners play the Raiders in Vegas and I can go attend that game,
yes,
I'm going, man.
Absolutely.
That just sounds like too good of an opportunity to turn down. The other the cities I do want to mention, I think Portland, Oregon is a city that does have a little bit of momentum. I think Russell Wilson is part of a possible ownership group to try to get baseball into Portland, Oregon. And not the biggest city that we have mentioned of the 3 I've got listed up here, but I think a city that has a really passionate fan base. The Trailblazers are always a huge draw. The Portland Timbers, their MLS team, has a really, really dedicated fan base there. So I think baseball would actually thrive really well in Portland, and you could get some amazing views too of the mountains, and it could be a great spot for baseball.
And I still think, you've got one Canada team, and I know we had the Expos, and that didn't work out, and they moved to Washington, but I still feel like there's a lot of fans in Canada that could have a second team in Canada, and then you could do, your Blue Jays aren't on an island by themselves out there. If they needed to do some interleague stuff or some practice games, they might have a team a little bit closer that's easier to not go through customs, things like that. Big sad, but there's still a lot of diehard Montreal Expo fans out there.
Yeah, I think Montreal is the other one that, Vegas seems like the more obvious choice, but I also think baseball is not always about the obvious choice, for better or worse. And Montreal is a place that I think they want to do right by in a way. The whole
did they end during the strike? It was right around that time, right?
The strike really killed all enthusiasm for that team when they were obviously that 94 team, the fabled 94 Expos that looked like they were ready for a World Series. And then everything really falls apart, and then the team leaves. I think it was their final season was 2004, where they were playing half the games in Puerto Rico anyway. And I think that baseball, in a way, wants to do right by that team or that city. Give them a team of their own. Just bring the Expos back. Don't even call it anything else. It's sort of a Cleveland Browns situation. You bring the Expos back. The team history comes with it.
Yep.
And you give them a proper stadium. That's really what it was. It was a lack. Obviously, the team getting the rug taken out from under them during their best season of all time, and then a deteriorating stadium. But that deteriorating stadium, when they played preseason games there for the Blue Jays a few years back, sold that place out.
Oh, it was loud. Yeah, I remember when Vladdy Jr. wore Expos a jersey to pay tribute to his father, and it was just crazy. And I could easily see that, you get Vlad Guerrero Sr. involved with the team, maybe Pedro Martinez involved with the team, and I believe even was Randy Johnson there for a little while
Randy
as well.
Johnson was there. Yeah.
You've got a pretty good lineage of guys that can kind of bring it right back into the modern age.
Yeah, you got Larry Walker, Gary Carter, Andre Dawson. There's so many great names. A lot of Hall of Fame names. Moises Alou.
Yep.
Felipe was the manager of that 94 team. So, yeah, there's a lot of great lineage there with the Montreal Expos. So we'll see. Maybe you could also argue, especially during those postseason runs for the Blue Jays really became Canada's team.
Yep.
Everybody across the country, like the ratings were through the roof for those Blue Jays playoff games, from Vancouver all the way to Saskatchewan. They were all watching Blue Jays baseball. So
and look at the Raptors too. I mean, we go to our Upper Deck conference every year, and Canada's. They bring a lot of hockey shops from Canada, and I hear stories about how these fans just wait hours to get in. Like Maple Leaf fans will wait hours to get into pregame stuff or just to be a part of it, and how loud it is. And these fans are just hungry out there, and I think that they would do well with another baseball team.
Yeah, I think so. I think that as much as the Blue Jays have caught on in Canada, all across the country, another baseball team I think would do very well. Would give them a good stadium. I think you're going to do just fine. Unfortunately, I don't have our hometown, my hometown, San Jose on this list, which I just thought for years was finally going to get a baseball team. But one can dream.
Well, and I was thinking about that when we were talking about stadiums, about how they build things around the stadium. And, as much as the Santa Clara Levi Stadium is in my backyard, they really kind of messed around and didn't put anything there. So, I've got customers that come down here that are like, well, what do I do afterwards? Like, well, there's really nothing to do.
Right.
There's
downtown
nothing. There's there's nothing around.
10-15-minute drive. Yeah.
And if it's one of those situations, say you're going on a date and you go to a game, you want to go to maybe get a dinner afterwards, and if the stadium's not planned right, it doesn't bring that atmosphere afterwards.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say there still have not, as far as I know, there's still no shovels in the ground for that Oakland A's stadium at Jack London Square. So one can dream,
right?
Maybe downtown baseball in San Jose someday down the road. Well, I think that is going to wrap things up for this week. Make sure, of course, to subscribe here on Mojobreak Media if you have not done so already. Mojobreak Card Shop as well. We're going to be doing a lot of personal breaks and more on that feed. And, of course, our main feed on Mojobreak and Mojobreak.com. For Doug, I'm Cody. We will see you next time on the Mojobreak Dugout Session.